sentence is that it's the most effective method of pregnancy and STD prevention, but doesn't suggest, as our current curriculum does, that it should wait until individuals involved have made a commitment to each other and to any children they might bring into the world intentionally or unintentionally. Our current curriculum is producing better results than all these other curriculums. How does the SEAB meet the state mandate to choose curriculums that reduce pregnancy, STIs, and STDs? Demonstrably, it doesn't. It's clear that this is an attempt to teach a framework of beliefs that promote promiscuity among youth and children. You can teach sexuality without promoting such beliefs. Our current curriculum does that. But you appear to be promoting your own beliefs from a position of authority and power over our most vulnerable populations. I testify that these words are true, though you may disagree with them. It is impossible but that offenses will come, but woe unto him through whom they come. It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and be cast into the sea, than that he should offend one of these ones.
Thank you. Raylan Davis. For specific ages and others not. So that's my first question about how this program is going to be working. Second of all, my question is specifically, I would like to know how and where these state law required things will be in. I could not find them. I've reviewed the slides and the videos. Discuss the benefits of abstaining from sex until marriage and the benefits of ceasing sex if a pupil is sexually active. Include a discussion of possible emotional, economic, and legal consequences of sex. Advise pupils of the laws pertaining to the responsibility as parents to children born in and out of wedlock. Ensure that pupils are not taught in a way that condones the violation of laws of the state pertaining to sexuality, including but not limited to those relating to sodomy, indecent exposure, gross indecency, and criminal sexual conduct in the first, second, third, and fourth degrees. This is state required. It's not in this curriculum. Provide information for pupils on how young parents can learn more about adoption services and about the provisions of the Safe Delivery of Newborns law. By omitting the screen on abortion, you've also now omitted the screen that teaches our kids about adoption, which is state required. Include information clearly informing pupils that having sex or sexual contact with an individual under the age of 16 is a crime punishable by imprisonment, and that one of the other results of being convicted of this crime may be to the listed on the sex offender registry for 15 years. This curriculum does not follow Michigan state law. Of the 10 requirements, it met 4. So if you guys can address on how you plan to make this meet state law, I would really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Kelly Van Single.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Van Single, and I'm a parent of 2 life skills special ed students here in Saline. My daughters are 19 and 16, and they are both living with severe nonverbal autism. My daughters and their classmates are in a group of about 120 life skills students in the middle school, high school, and young adult program who have been waiting. They've been waiting to receive a sexual health curriculum that is adapted and modified to their unique and complex needs. The curriculum being considered has multisensory learning supports for our life skills students, meaning that information and learning topics are especially adapted and modified and broken down with a combination of visual and auditory speaking teaching strategies that are not available in the current curriculum. 50 to 90% of people living with disabilities will be the victim of sexual abuse and violence in their lifetime. And MDA guidance and state law requires public hearings, as we're doing today, before new health curriculum can be adopted. The law also honors and requires the rights of families to opt out of sex ed. So there is power in opting out, and I think that needs to be emphasized. This much-needed curriculum for life skills students has been thoroughly reviewed by some of our most experienced and talented special ed staff. It's broken down into clear modules and lessons by topic so that opting out according to each family's comfort level is paramount. If new or revised content curriculum is desired for Gen Ed, the same public review and opting out still stands. Today is about consideration for the life skills students and their special needs. My daughters and their life skill peers need access at long last to specialized curriculum for their own health and safety and their own self-advocacy skills. These hearings today are not about changing Gen Ed sex curriculum. That's its own separate thing in the future. Today is about considering what is needed for our most complex and vulnerable students. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Babcock.
Hello. As most of you know, I am not Ann Babcock, but I'm short. She could not be here, so she asked me to read this statement that she wrote and to fill out a form for her.
Tiffany Alexander on behalf of Ann Babcock.
Yeah. Okay, so I am unable to attend the meeting on August 20th, but I wish to have my statement read out at the meeting. I am a parent of 3 children who attend Saline area schools. Additionally, I work as a speech-language pathologist with children with a variety of needs in a nearby district. My oldest child is in middle school. He is kind, determined, and the funniest person in our family. However, depending on the studies referenced, he is also at a minimum at 3 to 5.5 times greater risk of being the victim of sexual abuse because of his developmental disabilities. My son is in middle school. I fully support the proposed alternative curriculum as a parent of a child who very much needs and deserves a curriculum that will help him to be safer, to advocate for himself, to understand his own body, and to live with dignity to the same degree as any of his same age peers without physical or intellectual disabilities. State law demands that sex education curriculum be provided and that it meet certain criteria. My son deserves to have a curriculum presented that is accessible to him and meaningful to him. Were I to purchase a curriculum on my own or to modify an existing curriculum, it would cost me a great deal in time and money. I spend a great deal of time modifying and adapting the world around us as it is to help my son be a part of the world and be as successful as he can be in it. I realize that basic human development and sexuality can be an uncomfortable topic for some people, particularly feelings about religion, personal feelings about religion, or the place of the disabled in society is allowed to enter the discussion. But discomfort over openly discussing these important issues only puts my son and others at much greater risk of harm. Discomfort with these facets of natural human development should not bar my son from having his legally mandated access to a requirement of state curriculum. Whether anyone is uncomfortable with the topic will not change the fact that my son will undergo natural human development. I would ask you to please consider carefully the input offered by the special needs parents. I want the same thing for all of my children: safety, dignity, a sense of belonging. Thank you, Ann Babcock.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment for the first round of public comment? Thank you. At this time, I have a brief response to the public comment shared during the first public hearing on August 5th. First, the Sex Ed Advisory Board wishes to thank everyone for their public comment. It is through this process that we gather and consider your input. We appreciate the respectful exchange of ideas. With response to parental rights, Michigan law grants parents the right to review materials in advance, the right to observe the instruction, and the right to excuse their child without penalty. Legal guardianship arrangements for students who have reached the age of majority will be respected. Regarding medical accuracy, the Sex Ed Advisory Board is a reflection of our community. Our members have varying views regarding gender identity, inclusive language, etc. Beyond individual opinions, the Positive Prevention Plus curriculum has undergone biomedical reviews by the Federal Office of Adolescent Health and was deemed to be medically accurate. Further, it was developed in partnership with the American Red Cross and recommended by the Michigan Organization on Adolescent Sexual Health. Regarding a comprehensive sex education program, the Saline Area School District has historically implemented a comprehensive sex education program. This means that curricula is employed that teaches abstinence is best and the only method that is 100% effective in preventing pregnancy and STIs. And other forms of contraception are also taught in the high school through young adult age. The Positive Prevention Plus curricula is congruent with this model. Who? Some public comments made need clarification. This particular curriculum manual is for the secondary level students with significant disabilities through the age of 26 years old. Further, it is designed to meet the needs of a traditionally vulnerable population of students. And finally, parents in the driver's seat. Some comments indicated concern that students would be taught concepts incongruent with family beliefs. This curriculum is uniquely designed to put parents in the driver's seat throughout the instruction, with multiple opportunities and homework designed to spark conversation about what this means for individual families. It also includes language that includes students who have been excluded from traditional programs. Families are encouraged to discuss these terms and what they mean for their own families. And now I'll turn things over for the presentation of the proposed curriculum.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kristen Hoffman-Peevler. This is my 4th year on the Sex Ed Advisory Board. If you had asked me 5 years ago, what do you think you're going to be doing for the next 5 years? I would not have said, I'm going to be learning a lot about sex and sex ed. But here I am, and it is rewarding, stimulating, community building work that I really have come to love. So thank you all for being here today. I wanted to give you a little bit of a timeline on where we have been and where we are going in this process and how it works, and how last term SEAB and this term SEAB have sort of gone through the process of curriculum review and discussion. Where we started. The Saline Area Schools Life Skills Program does not have a sex ed curriculum specifically designed to meet the needs of students who cannot access the general education curriculum. There's a hole there in our district. Parents and staff of these students have requested a comprehensive curriculum designed to address the specific needs of these individuals. Please note that this forum today addresses only the life skills special education sex ed curriculum and only life skills special education students. This same review process will be repeated from the ground for the general sex ed curriculum if changes are deemed necessary. In fall of 2019, secondary ed teachers and SEAB members reviewed multiple curricula which we determined not to meet the needs of special populations. Multiple modifications would have been needed in order to be inclusive of all students and their educational needs. In the spring of 2020, secondary teachers and SEAB members reviewed the 2016 version of Positive Prevention Plus curriculum. This then current version of the P3 curriculum was deemed an appropriate curriculum by the board and moved forward for public forum, and those dates were set. In the fall of 2020, a new SEAB was elected. You see many of the members here today. And when we were preparing the new group and preparing toward public forum, Positive Prevention Plus released a new 2020 version of the curriculum. Spring of 2021, we purchased that 2020 curriculum for review by the secondary teachers and the SEAB. In March 2021, the updated P3 curriculum was again deemed appropriate for our students and was presented to the current SEAB board. Each member was given the opportunity to review the curriculum in its entirety, in addition to ensuring that it met the criteria set by Michigan Department of Education. In May 2021, this board had several discussions about the P3 curriculum. We collectively decided that now is the appropriate time in the process to send the curriculum forward for community feedback. And that brings us to where we are now. This is the second of 2 public hearings. The first was on August 5th. The purpose of these public hearings is to gather community input, your input, to take back to the SEAB table prior to making a decision to recommend the adoption of the P3 curriculum to the Board of Education. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am Lindsay Gettner, and I currently am wearing my teacher hat. I was just hired as an assistant principal for the district. However, the work that I have done with this curriculum for review was with my special education teacher hat on. So I just want to preface that this isn't an administration thing on my behalf, it's a teacher thing. So who will implement this curriculum? Special education teachers in grades 7th through young adult. And these, again, will be taught to students who are receiving very individualized instruction in all content areas. We're talking about 120 students. Out of those 120 students that exist within our district, I have probably educated at least 60 of them in one way or another. This curriculum, as mentioned before, provides supports that our students don't get within the gen ed curriculum. Right now within the gen ed curriculum, you see text and you hear somebody speaking to that text. There aren't visual components that are provided to students. Visuals are great for our students. The students who have significant cognitive delays typically are unable to process information without visual support. Over the course of the 10 years that I have been a life skills teacher, I would say multiple times per year, I had parents come to me requesting support in the areas of masturbation, private and public touch, and menstruation. And unfortunately, I could speak to the parents who could then speak to their students, but I was not able to provide a social story for these students without getting that curriculum approved by the board. For those of you who do not know what a social story is, what it does is it takes a social situation, it takes it, pairs it down to simple and complex terms that are provided to a student, paired with visuals. With menstruation, masturbation, and private and public touch, pictures would not be able to be provided or text without getting approval from the board. This curriculum provides that. We also have inclusive language within this curriculum that we will be discussing later on in this presentation. And also this presentation will talk about trauma-informed practices. So those vulnerable populations that have a higher rate of being sexually exploited. I just said that incorrectly because I'm a little nervous, so sorry. We're gonna discuss how important it is to address those needs. So in the front of this curriculum, there are 3 P's objectives, and on that page, which is open to parents and both staff, the first 2 are to abstain from sexual intercourse, to abstain from drug use, including not sharing injection, drug equipment, and not consuming alcohol, to access resources and services, to exhibit passion for persons living with a disability or disease, to respect a variety of relationships and family configurations which exist in America today, with an emphasis on personal responsibility for sexual health within any family, lifestyle, religious, or cultural setting, to commit to end bullying and harassment behavior towards self and others. These are directly from the curriculum. General considerations for special populations. We talk about what does that vulnerability look like? Why are we saying this population is more vulnerable? And the curriculum, it addresses this. So the subculture of socialized vulnerability. Self-advocacy isn't always taught in meaningful and or cognitive delays make self-advocacy difficult for this population. Simple tasks such as asking for help, just even to get a drink of water or saying that I'm tired. Self-advocacy is difficult for this population, and it's our job to teach them how to advocate for themselves across all content areas. A higher incidence of sexual exploitation and abuse. People with disabilities have a 50 to 99% higher rate of potential abuse. Within that abuse, it's typically people that they trust and know that are doing the abuse. And so we need to make sure that we are teaching our students what that abuse could look like and how to stand up for themselves. These students have lower cognitive skills, difficulty understanding and generalizing abstract concepts. Unfortunately, sometimes it gets graphic with the visuals, and that is because comprehending text and verbal alone is not enough for these students. Limited opportunities for sex ed. We've addressed that today. We currently do not have a curriculum for our students in our life skills program that is adapted to meet their needs. Yes, they can sit in a gen ed class and listen to the teacher and see text in paragraph form. However, accessing this curriculum is difficult under those modes only. As mentioned previously, this curriculum is laid out in modules. It's set up by lessons that have modules within each lesson. Guardians will be given advance notice of this curriculum and have the right to opt their student out of any lesson or module per MDE requirements. I am going to walk you through what a lesson today looks like within a module within that lesson. These modules also allow for processing time. Again, students with cognitive delays typically have delayed processing. So if a lesson needed to be repeated, this allows for it. If a teacher deems that we need to slow down the pacing of a lesson or a module, that can occur as well. Right now in our general education classes, we're talking about just a few days that the access to curriculum is there. We could spread this curriculum out over the course of a year or years if needed. And the repetition that could be provided is also within this program. The positivepreventionplus.com does have a review of this curriculum if you're unable to come in and review the entire binder. That's available at any time to anyone. It does meet the national standards and MDE requirements, and I have that linked in here as well. We will be omitting Module 6 of Lesson 10 to be in compliance with MDE, as we are not able to discuss abortion. This is an overview of all of the lessons that are provided within this curriculum. I'll give you a moment to review them. I'm gonna now go through a lesson. Each lesson has an introduction page that would be sent to parents, as well as an opportunity to review the curriculum in advance, including breakdown modules. Saline area schools would have a signature line added to this. It's the one part of the lesson that doesn't have a signature line provided by the 3 Ps, but we would add it. That would open up that dialogue for parents to say, I want to know more about this lesson, and we could have them preview all of the content within the lesson at that time. So you'll see here in lesson 1, the modules are laid out, objectives are laid out.
You can't read it from back here at all.
Can you see it now? There's a screen behind you as well. So you can see here that there are modules. You'll see that there's an icon that indicates worksheets, so that would prompt a parent if they want to see exactly what that worksheet looks like. They have that option. Objectives, materials, and again, if they wanted to see any of the teacher materials, they could review those as well. Words to know, and then there's notes on the side. This does come from the teacher manual. However, we would provide this to our families, and at the very bottom, we would add a signature line for review. Each lesson has a warm-up worksheet that asks for parent and caregiver signature for review. So here's the lesson warm-up. There's a name for the student. The copy of this, there's actually a line next to where it says name and a line next to signature. It just didn't come through the copy machine. So this goes over. Again, going to this visual component, yes is paired with a thumbs up. No is paired with a thumbs down. I cannot iterate enough that visuals have to be paired with words for students who have cognitive delays in order to process content. And there's that line that says signature of parent or caregiver. Each lesson has activities that also ask for parent-caregiver signature for review. I'd also like to show that the visuals on this lesson are not, they're not misinterpreted. So sometimes when we see visuals in special ed, we get a little confused on what those visuals mean because they're either outdated or they're grainy. And although this does look grainy in the curriculum, and it's not. Sometimes you'll see cartoon figures making expressions, and those can be hard to comprehend. So these are real people within these pictures. And again, here is that signature line. Each lesson has a lesson wrap-up that asks for parents and caregivers' signature. I will blow that one up. Unfortunately, that one's not going to get any bigger. So this is the lesson wrap-up, and these are the objectives that the lesson wanted to go over with the students, again with visuals. The nice thing about each lesson wrap-up, it says, ask your parent or caregiver. Show your parent or caregiver. They want students to show their families the lesson worksheets and the lesson wrap-up. Ask them what they remember experiencing about changes in their body. That's just one example. There's always a follow-up question that prompts a conversation with their family. It also helps parents communicate these needs with their students. So you'll see at the bottom, ask your child what the most interesting or confusing thing they learned in this lesson. Sometimes these topics are difficult for families to have with their students because they did not go to school to be a teacher. They don't always know how to broach these topics with their children, and so they look to us for guidance with this. This curriculum allows for us to use something to provide that guidance. Saline area schools will provide all of these ahead of time versus after completion of each lesson or module. This gives us 4 opportunities to have two-way communication with our families and interaction for our families to have with their child. This is a team effort, and we need everybody on board. Each lesson does have a video slide deck component. I'm going to be showing you a slide deck from lesson 4 for public and private behaviors. I will be moving my microphone down to my computer, so you all get to just watch this for a little bit. Can you all hear me still? Yes? Okay. So do you remember, so each lesson goes over the topics that have been discussed except for that lesson 1, because obviously they hadn't talked about anything yet. And again, paired with visuals. Unfortunately, my computer volume is frozen, so I'm going to see what I can do about that. Okay, we don't have anybody in here. Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm in present mode right now, so my computer might not allow for me to have volume. Anybody see sound? Okay, that's there.
It's fun. We'd pretend we were superheroes.
Sorry about that.
Underwear superheroes. Oh, it's too bad those days are over. You're growing up so fast.
What do you mean?
You're getting too old to do these things in public.
What things?
So then a discussion happens about what was just occurring in the video. What today's lesson is going to be about, private versus public, which is a topic that comes up often with the families that have students in the life skills program. Again, words are paired with visuals. This is the activity. This discusses how you should act with different people.
Do you remember when you and your little sister used to run around the house in your underwear?
You were so cute.
Yeah, that was fun. We'd pretend we were superheroes.
Underwear superheroes. Oh, it's too bad those days are over. You're growing up so fast.
What do you mean?
You're getting too old to do these things in public.
What things? What's the difference? He used to run around in our underwear all the time, and it didn't matter.
What's different now is that you're going through puberty and you now have the body of a developing young man.
And in our family, we believe that young men and women with developing bodies shouldn't be seen naked or in their underwear in front of other people. Do you understand what we're trying to explain?
Yeah, I think I get it. As we get older and our bodies change, the rules also change about what we can do in public and private.
That's right.
Okay, it makes sense.
You can see after this video was repeated twice that there are comprehension questions added at the end, and then the objectives are taught again. Then there is a quiz at the end, and then you check your answers. Every slide deck has an Ask Your Parent or Caregiver component. So new lessons that have not been previously discussed in current or previous curriculums for Gen Ed, obviously we don't have any lessons for special education, are human trafficking and bullying. Lessons also promote healthy choices in regards to not only sexual content, but also refer to self-care and healthy relationships. I'm going to show you a lesson about bullying now. I want to indicate that it not only shows the definition of bullying, but how to resist bullying and protecting oneself. So again, the same layout with that introduction page that parents can review. We will be adding a signature line to the bottom of those. An introduction. A lesson warm-up paired with visuals. What are the effects of bullying? These are all topics that aren't currently in our curriculum. Resistance skills, going back to the importance of self-advocacy. We have to explicitly teach our students how to say no and when to say no. We have to discuss the differences between body language, verbal content, and physical touch. This is an example of talking about body language. Communicating clearly. What does that look like? This is students practicing their responses with real life situations, which are very important. This is the fourth module with it would be protecting themselves, but it's titled Protecting Myself. And this prompts them to go through an activity for multiple real life situations. And these are blown up visuals for this lesson. And again, this lesson would be paired with a slide deck with audio provided like I had shown you for the other lesson. Here is the lesson on human trafficking, something that not only doesn't exist in our curriculum, but is an increasing issue within our society, specifically for people who are more vulnerable. So you'll see the consistency in layouts of all of the lessons. So parents can choose if they don't want their child to be a part of certain lessons, modules, or maybe they don't want them to do the activities. And again with activities. You'll see again the signature line or parent or caregiver. Here, where it says teacher resources, both teacher resources are sometimes indicated within the lessons, but also in the appendices. Those are for teachers and for parents to review, but will not be shared with students. To cover some of the other content, there is language in Lesson 1, Module 2 that say body with a penis and body with a vagina versus male and female body. However, this does not eliminate words boy or girl or male or female in other sections. I am going to show you what that looks like. So this is body with a penis. What are the changes that occur? Typical development. Lesson 1, Module 4 does include information about gender identity, gender expression, attraction, and biological sex. That is what this looks like. It's giving definitions of what these mean. Unfortunately, students with cognitive delays may hear words but not always understand what those words mean, and so we need to give them definitions paired with visuals.
Gender identity part is important because that's a newish issue and it's controversial. So it's important for the public to be clear on what we're bringing.
Go ahead and read it.
Yeah. Gender identity, the curriculum teaches a person knows they are a boy, a girl, neither, or someone in between because of how they feel inside. So you see that it includes the words boy and girl, but redefines them. Body parts inside and outside tell a doctor if someone is male, female, or rarely someone in between. So there's a little bit of a difference between the way those two parts are presented.
Lesson 2, Modules 2 and 3 discuss private parts and anatomy and calls these sexual body parts. Private parts and sexual body parts. Unfortunately, I cannot get that to flip. So if you need a little time to turn your heads, you're more than welcome to. You will see here that information about masturbation is included, and there are visuals. Yes, this might be a difficult conversation to have with not only your child, but as a teacher with your students. However, for people with cognitive delays, sometimes masturbation happens at an earlier age, and they're not understanding what's happening to their body, nor can they advocate for themselves or communicate that something is changing within their body. And so we do need to have content available to not only give to our parents, but to have when we know that students are struggling with this and understanding where and when and how their bodies are changing. This is talking about external structures. And much like in a biology course when discussing these, there is labeling that occurs. And for students with cognitive delays, they might not be able to write these words down. So within the slide decks, it pairs them within the slide deck. So the words move, no one has to write the words. Internal structures. Lesson 7, Module 2 discusses that sexual content can also include vaginal, oral, and anal sex. Sexual abstinence is emphasized more in this curriculum than others that we have reviewed. Vaginal, oral, and anal sex is something that we do need to teach to our students with processing delays, because unfortunately they are often abused, and we need them to understand what needs to be consented to, and if they are abused, what could that look like. Here it is talking about sexual abstinence and its importance. Guardians will be given notice that this curriculum will be taught, and if guardians want to opt out of these modules, they have the legal right to do so. They can opt out of an entire lesson, specific modules, or the entire curriculum. The appendices within this curriculum, the first one would be omitted as it does relate to California law. Appendix B does mention also California law, but that would be replaced with Michigan law. Appendix D and Appendix C, both of these are not for students. They are not direct lessons, and they will not be given to students. All of them have been printed and placed in the binder as well. I'm going to turn this over to Julie Kelly to talk about next steps.
Julie Myers, it's okay.
Again with the
confusing, I
nervous,
heard it.
and I'm mixing everybody up. My apologies.
It's okay, you're doing a great job. I'm Julie Myers, another member of the Sex Ed Advisory Board. So the next steps after the next public comment here when I am finished, we will take this all back to the Sex Ed Advisory Board, and we will look over and review all feedback from the both public forums, and then determine our next steps as a group and whether we'll be recommending this curriculum to the Board of Education for adoption. If approved, just to be clear, this would not be taught in the 21-22 school year. So there does need to be a pretty significant time period to get teachers trained and to go through all the materials. So at the earliest, if this is brought to the Board of Education within this calendar year, the earliest it would be taught would be 2022. And last is a QR code. So even if you don't feel like getting up to give public comment, but you do have feedback for us, please scan this because we will also review these as a Sex Ed Advisory Board.
Thank you. We'll now move into the second public comment portion. A member of the public may address the Sex Ed Advisory Board briefly for up to 3 minutes. Individuals addressing the Sex Ed Advisory Board should take into consideration the rules of common courtesy. The public participation portion of this meeting cannot be used to make personal attacks against a Sex Ed Advisory Board member, a Board of Education member, a district employee, or a student. Please know that we will be recording your comments and taking them under advisement, but will not be responding to comments at this time. Student comment will be called first, and then other public stakeholders. If you are going to make a comment, please turn your comment slip to the board table. Is there any student comment? With no student comment, we'll move to other public stakeholders. Oh. We have a couple here. Yep, just bring it up to the table.
And just just the end of the table here. Thank you. And just a reminder, or for those who came in late, you have 3 minutes. At 2 minutes and 30 seconds, I will put up the yellow card indicating that you have 30 seconds left. And also if you go past at 3 minutes, the red card will come up. And also on my timer, an alarm will go off, and we'll continue to run it until you've finished that up. Thank you.
Our first public comment, Sarah Robinson.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. So my name is Sarah Robinson. I'm a parent. My daughter, Marin, will be going into 8th grade this year. Loves school, loves her teachers, loves the kids, is very excited to go back in person this year. Just a quick comment. I don't know if we'll ever have like a Q&A thing to have kind of a more of a conversation. I think that might be easier to communicate and understand better. There's just a lot of information thrown out at once, and having a back and forth might be helpful. I don't know if that's anything you guys have ever considered or done. So a couple of just thoughts. Having a hard time trying to understand the need for a generalized curriculum for special education students where the spectrum is so incredibly broad. The IEP program has been extremely beneficial for my daughter, being able to individualize her needs in the curriculum to where she is at. I know none of these kids are the same. Some you can kind of cluster into groups. I think with Marin's group, she's probably on the lower end of her understanding and abilities with her peers and stuff. And so trying to figure out why we want a fire hose of information for this huge spectrum of kids where, some can understand and possibly, need information. Like one parent, the statement that was read, like her kid would love, or she would love that for her kid to have that information, whereas others may not need it or even be able to understand and comprehend it. So I love that the information is there for parents to access and kids to have, but I don't love the idea of just being like a wide net thrown out to everybody for maybe the few or the minority who would want access to so much information. The other thing, no one is more aware of the vulnerability of this group of kids. Marin is a beautiful 14-year-old girl who is right in the middle of puberty, and yeah, she is aware of sexual changes in her body. I am aware that she is aware. We talk about these things, but I I don't know how some of this information would help her. I don't know that teaching her about oral sex, anal sex, exposing her to so much sexual knowledge is anything that she can comprehend. Maybe later, but trying to understand how we can, what's the difference between teaching a 7th grader and 8th grader with cognitive delays and a young adult kid who's 26 and at a different level. So anyways, lots of questions still. Not sure that this is the right curriculum, maybe something smaller, giving people access to this information if they want it and their kids need it.
Thank you. Eleanor Kelly.
Hi. Yes, I'm Eleanor Kelly. I've lived in the school district for nearly 9 years, and I have a son who's 14, has Down syndrome, and will be joining the high school in a few days. The people with disabilities mature and experience exactly the same physical and emotional changes as their peers. Yet it seems, particularly in the past, that it's okay for them to receive less appropriate sexual health education. Now, my son is always going to be vulnerable to sexual predators. He needs to be given as much help as possible at home, but also in school with the education he receives, so that he can thwart, he can recognize, and he can report when he's going to be in a vulnerable position. So I wholeheartedly support the implementation of the Positive Prevention Plus program. Our kids with special needs really need this. They just really do. So I'm hoping that it's going to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Darcy Berwick.
Once again, I am not Darcy. However, I have been asked not to read her statement, but just to fill out a form and come up and say she regrets she cannot be here due to another obligation, but she fully supports this program, and that's all.
Thank you. Tiffany Alexander. Don't go far.
Hi. So I've been asked to relay a story by a parent who wanted to remain anonymous. I'm not 100% comfortable with sharing it, but because it's really important, I'm going to. I've also been up for more than 24 hours, so please be patient with me. Okay, so this parent is a parent in Saline Schools. She has 2 kids. Both of them have special needs. One is in the school, one is not. One you are likely familiar with, the other one you are most likely not. Prior to being here, her older child was sexually assaulted. She did not want her learning about sexual education. She felt she couldn't comprehend it. She felt it was not something that was going to benefit her and would only confuse her and make things more difficult, possibly more vulnerable. So she opted out of the program that she was in, and she moved. And prior to the move, her child was sexually assaulted. She did not know what oral sex was, and it went on for a period of months before she knew anything of what happened to her child. Her exact words that she wanted relayed was, "Please do not be me. All these children are in your hands. If you do not educate them, more children will be like mine." And that was pretty much it. So she supports it, and so do I.
Thank you. Corey Belote.
Wow. That's a really powerful statement to follow. Okay. I wanted to speak in support of the inclusive language. especially using gender identity and biological sex, and also including the genderbread person. My 14-year-old has gender dysphoria and is non-binary, which means that they're neither boy nor girl. And it took them several years to understand this and to be able to come up with a term that described them. And luckily for them, they were able to express themselves in a way that we were able to have this discussion pretty early on and like throughout the process as they were evolving into the person that they are. So, and when I think back of the struggles that my child went through trying to figure out who they are, it really makes me worry about kids who have trouble advocating for themselves or knowing the words of how to explain how they're feeling or where they're confused. And just this past year, last year, there was a gay-straight alliance that was started at the middle school, and my child joined, and they found their people. They found more kids that were like them. They also found friends who supported them. I belong to several parent groups. A lot of them are through Facebook groups, and the number of parents who talk about experiences their transgender children are going through also say that their child has autism. And I can't tell you the percentage because, I mean, it's Facebook, so people who knows who's not saying something. But if you went by Facebook alone, it looks like there's a lot of kids with autism who are also transgender or have gender dysphoria. So by providing this inclusive language in the Positive Prevention Plus, that is going to reach kids who aren't normally reached. They're going to maybe have the words or the visual to explain how they're feeling, and they'll have a safe place to talk about who they are and how they feel and to find their people. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen Osnes.
Hi, my name's Jen Osnes, and my husband and I are here today. We have twins that are entering their freshman year of high school next week. And I spent a couple hours the other day looking through the actual module just to get an idea of what was in there. And I also did some research into what Positive Prevention Plus, where it originated, who's behind it, and all that. A lot of red flags came up for me. First of all, the idea, there's a big push that parents can opt out, so we should feel like, okay, well, if we don't like it, we have an out. But my big concern with that is I know my children, I know the children that they've been in class with all these years, and how are you going to prevent the other children that in the class hearing this from talking about it, acting out on it? I know my children perseverate on things greatly, and I've talked to teachers and parents that have worked with them and other kids, and they're very concerned about this as well. Like, how does this look for those of us that do opt out when our kids come back in the classroom? Is it just going to be like, okay, this topic's done, never going to be mentioned again? I just would like to know how you guys think about that, and how you would talk to the parents about how they could work through that. So I don't feel like we really have the option of opting out, I guess, is what I'm saying. And also, just it was mentioned that parents were in the driver's seat, and I'm not sure exactly how that can be if we can't actually come into the classroom and hear what's being said and ask questions and participate in the whole communication of it. I don't feel like I'm really ever been in the driver's seat as far as it came to my kids' education and the curriculum that's taught in the school. When I'm at home, we try to help them in whatever way we can to give them, what we feel they need to know about certain topics. But when they're at school, I don't know how we could be in the driver's seat. And I would tell parents and those of you on the board just to be careful, because this was initiated in California. It was brought about by a California law, Positive Prevention Plus. It was, and I think it says right in there, when I was looking through the curriculum, it says that the California Department of Education continues to monitor and advise on all matters related to our curriculum content in public schools. So again, and their original piece, they had there was no opt-out option for kids K through 12. So my concern is that's what is coming next for us. Is there, we'll bring it in this way and it looks great to some of these parents, but then we all of a sudden say, nope, we can't opt out anymore. And also to the comment that, that we didn't go to school to be special ed teachers, I totally agree with that. And there's many times that I don't feel adequate to educate my children, but I do feel like my husband and I live with our children. We know them best. We know them better than anybody. And we know what's appropriate for them and what is not appropriate for them. And also, I do feel like...
Finish your thought, and then your time is up.
Okay. I just want to say our children are also, they understand a great more than sometimes they're given credit for. I just also just want to say I've talked to many people about this, and most of them are really just appalled that Celine would be considering this sort of sex ed curriculum for special ed students.
You've gone over for a minute. Okay. Out of fairness for everyone. Kyle Shield.
I think sexual education for the special needs should definitely be taught. I think we're lumping a lot of things into the sexual education curriculum with like drug use, alcohol use, bullying. I think these are separate discussions that should be talked about or touched upon. And I think with the oral and anal sex, I think with the non-binary or the gender fluidity items, I think if people want to teach their kids this type of stuff, maybe that they should set a different class up that people could actually opt into rather than have to opt out of. With it being the state of Michigan requiring, sexual reproduction being taught, this stuff doesn't really go into sexual reproduction as much as, the thoughts of other people that, is not necessarily medically sound or factual, in the medical community. So I think if they wanted to do it, they could go with a different, class that could actually dive in a little bit deeper if people wanted to get into that. And I don't think that it should be forced on all the other people. And I don't think they should have to opt out of it. I think it'd be something they would have to opt into rather than opt out of. Thank you.
Thank you. Raylan Davis.
I'm going to go over my timeline. Did you guys all get one of these? Did you all get one? Okay. My name's Raylan Davis. Again, one of my biggest concerns here, and here's those graphics for you guys all to see again. The slides are not editable. How are you going to get rid of the slide about abortion when it is an online slide? Even if the teacher has to click through the slide, that word abortion will be put on a screen, even for 1 second, and that is against state law. Having this curriculum, I would love to know how you're going to make this curriculum meet state standards. How are parents going to opt out of a module? Is a teacher really going to stop, take a student out into the hall with special needs who has behavior issues, come back in, teach for 5 minutes, go back out, grab the student, come back in, find another student, take them out? Having the parents opt out per module is not an option. We then have to opt out of lessons. I found 10 of the 13 lessons I would opt my kid out of. My autistic kid saw these images last night. I'm going to flip because there's different images. And he was grossed out. He's we've talked about these things. My 4 kids, or at least I only have 1 kid at home who's been through the normal sex education, was shocked. My 16-year-old in high school at seeing these images in their classroom. I agree special ed needs help. I agree there's a lot of good things being taught. I believe we need to teach our kids for advocacy and anti-bullying and harassment and even some forms of sexual reproduction and about their bodies. It doesn't matter when you teach a kid, I can come home and I can talk about beliefs. There is no way I can get these images out of my kids' heads once you put them in there. These images are not appropriate, especially for special need kids. When are the slides and videos going to be available for the parents? We end up buying a curriculum so we could see the slides. There are issues there that are not being talked about in this presentation. State law requires all materials available to parents. When are we going to get the slides and videos? I know you have access to them because it's just a password protected thing. Lesson 1, you go back and look at that introduction page sending to parents. Not a single gender or sexuality word is lifted in the definitions. How are we supposed to know to opt our kids out of it if we are not given enough information? Unless the parent looks at the whole binder, looks at all the slides, look at all the materials, they do not have enough information to opt out. Specifically, I'd like to talk about inclusivity. On the bullying, the one thing that I was great, do you realize it talks about specifically, and on the picture, apparently you don't have to bully against race, gender expression. It doesn't say anything about beliefs, religion, ethnic, disabilities. It's not inclusive.
Thank you.
So we need to teach the kids and be whatever. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment at this time? All right, moving forward for next steps. The curriculum presented, as well as the feedback form, will continue to be available for review throughout the end of the month. There is also, and has been since August 4th, a Chromebook available to view the online content in addition to the curriculum binder. Login information is located in the curriculum binder. The Sex Ed Advisory Board will be compiling your input and reviewing the community feedback as we consider possible next steps. I will communicate to the Board of Ed what, if any, recommendations the Sex Ed Advisory Board makes when those decisions are made. Finally, I would like to thank you for your input tonight and to thank this Sex Ed Advisory Board. Every single member of this board, regardless of personal opinion, has worked with honor and integrity throughout this entire process, committed to providing numerous opportunities to engage this community with the online forum, scheduling these hearings at varying times to accommodate non-traditional work schedules, and keeping this curriculum available for an entire month. I publicly commend them for their continued efforts. And at this time, we will adjourn the meeting.